Hi, everybody. I'm Al Bernstein, Showtime boxing analyst, and I listen to the Ringside Boxing Show.
Live from Monterey on California's beautiful Central Coast, this is the Ringside Boxing Show. I'm Dennis Taylor, welcoming you to join me and my expert analysts, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, and John J. Responti, today and every week for the hottest, sweatiest show on the West Coast. And now, from Studio 1A, it's the Ringside Boxing Show.
Yes, it is. Welcome to the Ringside Boxing Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm Dennis Taylor, and we've got some absolutely great stuff dead ahead. Our featured guest today is the former IBO cruiserweight champion of the world and a guy who was still an active fighter and a world-ranked contender when Wladimir Klitschko called him up out of the blue and invited him to become his trainer. Johnathon Banks stepped into some huge shoes. He replaced Emmanuel Stewart, who had just passed away, and he stayed with it. He's still training fighters today, one of whom is Cecilia Braekhus, who is 34-0 with 5 world title bouts, and she is ranked by BoxRec as the #1 female boxer of all time. Johnathon Banks also was a Kronk Gym guy from his early teens, and John Responti and I spoke with him earlier this week about all of those things and more. One of the things you're going to hear him talk about, we asked him about to take us behind closed doors with Wladimir Klitschko when Shannon Briggs was pulling all of his crap, and just give us a feeling of what Klitschko's mood was, what his opinion was of Shannon Briggs at that time, and that's really interesting. All that's coming up. Before that, we got our British correspondent, Paul McLaughlin, who has another update for us from the United Kingdom, which is absolutely overflowing with boxing news these days. And we're going to kick it off, as always, with a look at the week in boxing with our expert analyst. Travis Hartman's a professional boxer. He's a boxing trainer, and he's a boxing promoter from Osborne, Missouri. He's now living and training in Orlando, Florida. Rizwan Zahid's a boxing journalist from Toronto. And our third analyst, John J. Responti, is hanging out on Santa Catalina Island today, celebrating his girlfriend's birthday. So we've got a special guest analyst sitting in for him today, Danny Serratelli, the fight lawyer, is a boxing trainer from Newark, New Jersey, or maybe Passaic, we'll get that right. And he also created BrickCityBoxing.com, a boxing website that's covered the sport in his area for a very long time. And you've heard him on the Ringside Boxing Show a few times before, but this is his first appearance with us on the opening segment where we all pretend to be smarter than the average bear. Danny, what's up, my friend? How are you?
Good. How you doing, Dennis?
Doing good. And what city are you in? You in Newark or Passaic?
Yeah, I'm Newark. I'm Newark. I have an office up by Passaic, but I'm North New Jersey. Yeah, that's the Brick City Boxing. Brick City is Newark.
Yep. Okay. All right. So, hey, if your man Cory runs for president, are you going to vote for him? Cory Booker?
Probably not. Probably
really?
not. I'm friendly with him now. I'll vote for him on the record. I'll vote for him. When I go in there, I have to think about it.
Okay, we'll talk to you about that some other time.
Hope he doesn't listen.
Okay.
Yeah, I hope he's not listening. I'm just kidding.
Hey, Travis, the Canelo Golovkin rematch for me has a very different feel from that first fight. I've never really heard either one of these guys talk any kind of smack before this, but there really seems to be some pretty genuine animosity this time around. They're really not being cordial to each other anymore. You're a professional fighter. How do you think that might affect what we see in the ring? How much do emotions matter?
I mean, emotions do matter for sure, but these guys are veterans of the sport. I mean, they've had over 40, pro fights. So these guys they're classy, they're elite. They're not going to let that really affect them, to be honest. Like, I know that all of the trash talking is a lot different because both of these guys actually they're very classy dudes. Like in the past, like, you never hear of Canelo mouthing anybody. You definitely never hear of Triple G mouthing anybody. Like, those guys are like, he's the quiet assassin, pretty much. He does all this talking in the ring. But so it's kind of, I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to make the sales go through the roof right now because there's a lot of bad blood. I mean, with all the steroid allegations going around with the failed test and just pretty much everything surrounding this, it's heating everything up, and I'm excited. I mean, all of us on the show were excited for the first one. We definitely, after that first decision, I know a lot of people for sure didn't think that it was a fair decision. A lot of people thought Triple G won. I was in the minority because I did think Canelo won, which everybody thinks I'm crazy, but I still think he won barely, but I think he did. And I think this time around it's going to be another – I don't see the fight changing a whole heck of a lot. I mean, these guys are who they are. You know, they've had over 40-something pro fights. They're not going to change much of what they originally brought to the table. They're just going to bring a little more of what they brought to the table the first fight, but I see it going almost a similar way. I see Canelo outboxing in this one, and I don't think the emotion is going to have too much of an effect in this. I really don't. I think the emotion, it's going to be, I think all of the emotion is really, it's just the pre-fight, you know, build-up of a big, big fight with some bad blood. But once they get in that ring, I mean, we're fighters. That's all we know how to do. So once that bell rings, we forget about all that other bull crap that was in there, and we go to work. You know, we're clocking in. That first bell rings, we're just putting our time clock in and going to work. And that's what's going to happen with these two guys, because it's Triple G. This guy is elite Hall of Famer. It's Canelo Alvarez, legit Hall of Famer. They know what to do and when to do it, and I don't think emotion's going to affect them once that bell rings.
Not even in terms of aggressiveness, huh?
You know, I will say that I do feel the first fight, actually emotion has something to do with it, because I remember Canelo in that first fight taking a couple shots and was just like, bring it on. Like he got really, I think, a big adrenaline rush, because I think Canelo going into that first one was like, I don't know if I can take Triple G's power, because Triple G's power is unheard of. Like everybody, you know, that's one thing you talk about with Triple G. And I do remember Canelo kind of taking a shot and then getting a little cocky and kind of put his like time to hit him again. So the first fight there was emotion, but I think Canelo knows. I just think he knows he can't get emotional, because if he does, it will affect him.
Okay, Riz, Abel Sanchez and Golovkin seem to be working overtime to push Canelo's buttons. They're painting him as a guy who ran from Golovkin the first time around, which Canelo does not like. They're taunting him about betraying the Mexican style of boxing, which is something that Golovkin has also laid claim to. He claims he's a Mexican-style boxer. Sanchez says that if Canelo stands and fights, he's going to get knocked out. And Canelo is a guy with pride. He's not going to want to disappoint his fan base in Mexico. Do you think we're likely to see a slugfest, and maybe an ill-advised slugfest on Canelo's part?
No, I can't see a slugfest happening. I think it's just going to be. It takes two to make a slugfest, and I don't think Canelo's. Like Travis pointed out, Canelo's best option is to box. Standing in front of Golovkin is not the best idea. I mean, he's younger, he's faster. I think he has a very underrated technical skill set. So why wouldn't he do that? It wouldn't make sense for him to just stand right in front of the guy. So I think it's going to be very similar to the first fight. The first fight was still entertaining. I just don't think it was the war that people expected it to be. So I think we're still going to get a very, very good fight. But I think it's going to go very similar to the first fight. I think both guys look at it, Canelo looks at it as if, I could just, not give away some of the middle rounds and I could have won. Golovkin looks at it as, the first couple of rounds I gave away, I could have won. And I could have stepped it up in the middle rounds and not give away some of the last couple of rounds. So I think both guys kind of look at it the same way. But to be honest, I think in some ways we might see a very similar fight. But to me, I look at Golovkin's age. He just turned 36, I believe. That's the wrong side of 30. And this is the age where some guys they're just completely different fighters. We've seen it tons of times. The rare exception was a guy like Hopkins, but Golovkin's a different kind of fighter, and power punchers tend to age decently well. And Golovkin is a very people forget he's not just heavy-handed. He has the smarts. And I think the first fight, I think the idea of a pay-per-view was different for him. I don't think he's ever had that before. So I think that I don't want to say that threw him off, but I think it surprised him a little bit. Where I don't think that's going to be the case this time around. I think this time around he'll be a little more used to it. But I think it's not going to make a difference. I think all the trash talking and all that stuff, none of that's going to make a difference when it matters.
Well, and you know what else, Riz? Golovkin's never been beaten up in a fight. Never. He doesn't have that kind of wear and tear on him. So I think that makes him a young 36, don't you? Yeah,
that's a good point. But I mean, I don't think it's not the wear and tear that's going to matter, because that's what it was for Hopkins, right? Hopkins aged well because he didn't get really beat up, but I just think he's fighting because he's not fighting a guy who's like 32, 33. Canelo's just entering his physical prime in some ways, and Canelo has a lot of the intangibles that makes I want to say Golovkin vulnerable, but some of the things that you can exploit from Golovkin. But I think, funny enough, and I said this from the beginning, I thought Danny Jacobs would be a tougher fight than Canelo was for Golovkin, and you know, after seeing both those fights, I think that was still true. I think a guy who's taller and lankier and can move better is going to be harder for Golovkin, because Canelo, we'll see if Canelo slows down, because he did a bit in the first fight, and I think if Golovkin realizes that if he just went to the body a little early, if he didn't just give away, because I think he gave away the first 2 or 3 rounds before he actually got going. And if he doesn't do that this time around, I think Golovkin can honestly just win with the jab. Obviously, Canelo's a lot more technically sound than someone like David Lemieux, but you know, I think people forget how technically sound and brilliant Golovkin actually is. He was, you know, an all-time amateur. You know, he's one of the best amateurs of all time. He wasn't and he had power as an amateur, but he's not just a guy who just relied on power. So I think sometimes people think that, and I think even Canelo, that's what they're thinking, but I think Golovkin can make this easy on himself if he wants to. But again, at the wrong side of 30, sometimes it doesn't work like that.
Danny, who did you think won the first fight, and what do you expect from the rematch? Who wins it?
I had Triple G winning the first fight. I had it pretty much pretty similar to Harold Lederman. I didn't have all the rounds exactly the same, but I think I agree with both of the guys that Triple G started slow. Canelo came out boxing. I thought he won the first couple of rounds, but I had a stretch where I had Triple G winning all the middle rounds and maybe Canelo stealing. I think I had him winning like the 12th and maybe one other. I believe I had it 8-4 Triple G. What I did notice was a lot of the people watching the fight live, there was such a build-up and anticipation to the fight. It was exciting just to have those two guys in the ring. So even though the fight maybe didn't play out and get as exciting as people wanted, people were still excited, just anticipating what was going to happen and how, you know, the fight would play out and what, you know, as the fight progressed. I thought Canelo myself, when you watch the fight a second time, and people I knew who didn't watch the fight live, a lot more of them had Canelo winning the fight than the people who watched it live, I think, because your perception is different. And when you hear about what happened after the fight, I thought Canelo, in my opinion, tried to be a little bit too careful, tried to pick his spots too much, tried to be a little bit too sharp. And even though I didn't really think Canelo, Triple G landed anything really substantial throughout the fight. And I think that's why Canelo thought he was winning the fight. But I just thought he got outworked in those middle rounds way too much. As far as a rematch, I think Triple G and Abel Sanchez are doing what they're doing because they need Canelo to sit there and fight a little bit more to really make the second fight more advantageous to Triple G. And as a Mexican and as a guy with pride, I mean, I agree with Travis in that they're both such experienced guys. You know, they're not going to get in each other's head, and neither one is going to lose their cool and just blow it. But even the most minor changes as far as Canelo, I think even his own coaches are going to be telling him he has to work a little bit more and he has to stay a little bit busy, because he had little portions of the fight where he looked dominant, like for 20, 30 seconds, but then he didn't do anything for like 2 minutes. So rounds like that, I think it goes by how the judges score it. I tend to favor the aggressor. I know a lot of the judges, especially since Floyd Mayweather would win those rounds where he threw such a small amount of punches, landed at the higher percentage, and made the other guy miss, who was the aggressor. I think a lot of the judges favor the boxer. So I think it comes down to Canelo and how much how sharp he can be and how much he really wants to mix it up. Triple G, like they said, is going to be Triple G. He's going to bring the pressure, and I think he's going to start quicker, and it just depends. And if the ages come into play, I mean, the age is, what is he, 36, and Canelo, I think, is 28, right?
27.
So,
yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I think, as we see now, 36 now isn't 36 what it was 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So, but in that fight, I did think Triple G looked like he showed age, but was it that he showed age, or was it that Canelo just looked that fast and that sharp at times, So I tend to favor Triple G just based on, I think he's going to be more relentless in this fight, but at the same time, like Travis said, if Canelo can keep his stamina and conditioning going and put together those moments that he had in the first fight and just know that he needs to put more of them together, I could also see him, dominating at times, even if if he's that sharp and he could keep that pace for the 12 rounds, which I think he questioned in his own mind if he could, and that's why he was resting so much in the middle portion of the fight.
You know, honestly, why I scored it for Canelo, I scored it 7 rounds to 5 for Canelo. It was his defense. I just thought his defense was brilliant, and that was the main reason that I edged out for Canelo, because I think his defense is not talked about enough, but I think he made Triple G miss a lot, and I think that, in my opinion, that's why I ended up scoring it for him. And you're so right. There was moments, even in the first one, I think there was moments when Canelo would let his hands go, make him miss and move, where I thought Canelo dominated him for, little short spurts. And if he puts those together more, which he needs to, I think he could dominate Triple G. But Triple G is relentless, man. Triple G he's the real deal. I used to give him crap, 2, 3, 4 years ago. I thought he was overhyped, but I've come around. He's legit bona fide Hall of Famer for sure, and he's an elite fighter, and it's just going to be a great fight.
Is it going to go the distance, guys?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I want to see. To be honest, I know we all pretty much agree that it was tainted meat, but I'm curious how Canelo responds. I am. I want to see if he's any different at all. I think, I wouldn't. You know what? I wouldn't be surprised. Either guy. I maintain that either guy can still stop each other. Golovkin has a granite chin and all, but Canelo still has power, and Golovkin is again a little older now. And again, weirder things have happened. I think Golovkin can stop Canelo, though. I think there was moments in this first fight where he's looking at it and thinking he could have done things a little different. So I don't know. I think it's still going the distance, but a stoppage wouldn't shock me.
Okay. I think it's going to go the distance. The one thing that I don't like to say anything about, people with the whole suspension and the allegations of any kind of substance abuse. One comment I just wanted to make: when the fight first started, I actually watched it in one of the boxing gyms here. The guy had it on a big screen TV. We had a whole big crew there, everybody having different opinions. One of the first things I said in the first couple of rounds was I thought Canelo looked huge, like jacked.
Yeah, he did.
Like
it
looked. I didn't expect it. I expected Triple G to have a big size advantage going in, and when I saw them both in the ring, I thought Canelo looked like jacked and much bigger than I expected him to look standing in there with Triple G. So I don't know. I did read, and I know Dennis, you had mentioned something that he looks different coming into this fight.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, maybe it could be he thinks if he just added a little more, speed and sharpness and conditioning, it would help him. But I don't know. Something was weird with the size in the first fight to me. That was my first impression, seeing them both in the ring. So,
Travis, you're the fighter here, and I think so, too. I think Canelo looks noticeably thinner right now when you look at his workouts and stuff. For you, is that suspicious at all, considering that this first fight had to be canceled in May because the second fight had to be canceled in May because Canelo tested twice for PEDs, and he's apparently undergoing random testing from VADA for the very first time in his career, and suddenly he looks skinny, not skinny but thinner.
Well,
is that a telltale sign?
I don't know. I'll play the devil's advocate. I'll give you another scenario.
Okay.
Canelo's a big guy. Canelo usually balloons up to 180, and he always cut down. So he always was kind of a bigger guy. He always put on some weight after fights. Not fat. He never got fat, but he always put on quite a bit of weight, and his cut was always a big cut. So honestly, the first fight, he did look big, and I think they probably planned that, and they wanted that because he was coming up in weight. So that could have been planned. And then now, I think, to be honest, I think Canelo knows that his weight didn't matter, and he needed to be more in shape stamina-wise to beat Triple G, and maybe that's why they're thinner now. Because I think if Canelo is more in shape and has more stamina for this fight, I think he easily beats Triple G, and maybe that's what they're playing. That's just me. I always look for the good in people, and that's where I'm at right now. So I'm not saying that's the truth, but I could see that as well. Just because
definitely could be.
It does need to be thinner. I mean, we all know that muscle mass is fatigue-resistant muscle, and you don't want a lot of muscle because it will slow you down in fights. So maybe he's thinner and trying to come in this fight a lot more conditioned, because if he's more conditioned, guys, I can see him winning like a 8-4 or even a 9-3 in Canelo's favor, just because he's that good and that fast of a boxer that he can probably box circles around Triple G right now if he's in shape, if he's thin. And I don't know. That's my devil's advocate of just wanting to believe that he's clean. But I'm with all of you guys on that one. I remember seeing that first fight, and the way he was taking some of Triple G's shots, I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, Canelo's an animal. Like, where did this come from? Like, he was taking shots that I didn't think he could take, and he was catching them on his gloves, and he was absorbing a lot of power from Triple G. And I think our eye test usually doesn't lie to you, and I think when you looked at him in that first fight, you could suspect something. I mean, that's just, you can. Your eyes don't lie to you when it comes to that. I mean, we just got to use common sense sometimes, and when you looked at him, he did look like he was in the best shape of his life, and he put on a bunch of weight to get there even, and he looked cut up. He looked good. I mean, he did, and it showed the way he was taking shots. So, I mean, it is what it is. He's in the VADA testing now. He's passing all of the tests. He's doing what he's supposed to do. So hopefully he's clean, and we have 2 clean fighters so we can get a clean, legit result this time.
Okay, Riz, where do you come down on this? If Canelo was juicing before their first fight, and he's not juicing now, does it change your prediction at all?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I just think he's I mean, is he struggling to make a cut? I mean, they said it could be used as a diuretic. And I think mentally, I think it changes things. And you know what? I'll play devil's advocate as well. So maybe he's changing his strategy and thinks he needs to move a little more and not be so in front of Golovkin, that he's trying, like Travis said, he's trying not to be bulky. He's trying to be as lean as possible so he can kind of box more and move circles more, which is understandable. But you got to obviously see that the timing is bad considering what recently happened. But I don't think that's in Golovkin's mind, and I think that's what's really important. I don't think Golovkin's side is thinking that, oh, you know what, now he's clean, so we'll beat him easily. I don't think that's in their mind. I think they're going to approach it the same way, and if that's the way it is, then so be it. But I think Golovkin seemed very offended after the drug test came out, because for Golovkin, it sounded like what he said pretty much is that he knew all along. That's what he said, and he said there's pictures and all this other stuff. I wish we got some more information on that, but I think there is some, and I mean, Malignaggi, you got to take it with a grain of salt, but he said the same thing. This was kind of an open secret. So I don't know. It's going to be hard to tell until the fight is done. I don't think we're going to know anything before that, because we've seen some positive tests where it really, like a Mosley had a scandal, and I mean, he looked like the exact same fighter. Fernando Vargas got popped for something. I think his was a diuretic. He kind of looked like the same fighter. And there's other guys you see, some guys you just see a drastic difference, right? More in I've seen it more in MMA more recently, because they only recently enlisted a really harsh drug testing policy. But I mean, we've seen it in boxing sometimes for sure. There's guys who, all of a sudden testing gets a little more harsh, and guy's power goes away, or he just doesn't look as, invincible as he was, right? And then, aside from drug testing, look at someone like Antonio Margarito, right? He had some sort of advantage, and then all of a sudden the invincibility and him being that fearful was kind of gone out the door right away.
That Shane Mosley fight.
Exactly, ironically. And the funny thing is, if anyone was going to look at that, people thought Golovkin, if anything, would have been tested, would test positive, because they're like, oh, well, he doesn't look as powerful as someone like Canelo does. But his power, and that's why I say, is all built from technique and all built from what he's doing correctly. It's not just power. He's in the position to land as he's always supposed to land, with the most force, with the best angle, and he's throwing the best shot. All those things. I mean, you're doing that regardless, and the power is just a bonus. And I think that's what Golovkin has done really well. But I don't know if Canelo's mental state would be the same. And I think, and again, we're not going to be able to answer any of these questions until probably round 1 of the fight, or at least the weigh-ins, because the weigh-ins in this time, usually weigh-ins are not very exciting. I'm curious how Canelo looks at the weigh-in, because he was also growing. So when people compare when he was 5 years ago, I don't think that matters too much, because he was still like 23 at the time. Now I'd say he's a man. He's right in his physical prime. So any drastic changes to a man's body now is telling. So it'll be interesting to see how he looks on fight night weight. I'm not talking about us as men. We just tend to gain weight. That's totally different. But
guys, Dad Bod Central.
Yeah, I
had a question for you guys. I had a question. He only tested positive for clenbuterol, right?
Right. Absolutely right.
Because also clenbuterol, I mean, I'm sure Travis, or you guys probably know, just from being in the gym, being around people. I mean, I know people who've probably taken everything and how it affects them. And, obviously these guys on this high level, if they're doing stuff, they're getting, I'm sure, I hope, legitimate things and not like guys on these low levels. But really all clenbuterol does is it speeds up your metabolism. I mean, guys who have older guys sometimes, or guys having a problem making weight, to cut weight, take it. It doesn't really give you any strength advantage, put on any size, it's not really one of the ones to give you size or strength or even for your recovery. It's mostly just like thermogenic to cut weight, to speed you up and, stuff like that. So I don't think, unless he was taking something else that he didn't test positive for, I don't think that, contributed to his size. It helps guys get ripped up, but, not put on any kind of muscle.
Well, that's what I've also read.
Yep.
I've read that it could be used as a masking agent. And if you're right.
Yeah.
So it's maybe only
that
used.
Could be.
So the argument that you can always have is maybe he was taking that to cover up. Again, just devil's advocate here. But he's taking that to cover up anything else. And that's where the whole controversy was to begin with. It was not that, he was a guy who tested positive for tainted meat. It's you're the richest fighter in Mexico who can probably grow his own cattle if he wants to. Your trainer is a former butcher. So why are you having, this could very well happen. So why would you wait for it to happen and then say, oh, I'm not, now I'm not going to do it. So I think that's why, and that's why there's still suspicion around him, because it's a very convenient built-in excuse that was there to be used whenever he wanted to use it. Again, just like devil's advocate, but if I'm looking at that, I'm like, why would you wait for this to happen and then say, well, this is tainted meat? Because this is not, this is not year one of something like this. We're looking at a lot of the Russian boxers and Russian athletes who were tested positive for, I think it was nandrolone or whatever it was called. That was only put into the testing, I think, the 6 months before that. So it was common, and it made sense for a lot of athletes to be busted for it because they were not aware. But this is not a new thing that's been happening in Mexico. This has been happening for years. This is boxing.
Yeah, when you saw the list of guys for clenbuterol, I remember it was about 5 Mexican guys, so it was a good alibi at the very least.
And not recently. Those 5 guys were probably 2 or 3
older
years
ones
ago.
Right? Yeah, like Morales and
I remember.
Vargas, I think. Right?
Yeah, Francisco Vargas, I believe too. So and this was years ago. So this was not this. Those guys didn't test positive recently, and they adjusted accordingly. They realized, okay, you know what, I got to do something different. And when you're the richest fighter in Mexico,
and like you said, the biggest money fight ever in the history of any Mexican fighter at this point. Yeah,
and your trainer's a butcher. Like that just to me, you cannot have more knowledge of this than anyone else. Right,
well, did you hear what Canelo said though? Canelo, I liked what he said. Again, I feel like I'm sticking up for Canelo all the time. I don't know why.
I liked what he said too, though. The way he spoke, I agree.
He was like, I'm a normal guy. He's like, he stopped at a taco stand or something is what he said, where he got that meat. He's like, I'm a normal guy. He's like, I do normal things like everybody else, and I ate at a taco stand that probably I shouldn't have ate at. Obviously, looking back now, but he was just like, that's what I did.
And I agree on that. And most fighters, it's true. Most fighters are more like regular guys, even the ones who make millions of dollars. You guys know they're not like these guys with these big unions and Major League Baseball or the NBA or something. Even if they're making multi-million dollars, they are going to the taco stand and hanging out with the guys. I know the guys in the gym or guys that made it that I knew. Yeah,
that's true. Absolutely true. This is the Ringside Boxing Show from Monterey, California. I'm Dennis Taylor. We are talking to our expert analyst, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, and today Danny Serratelli, who's sitting in for John J. Responte. You're going to hear John a little bit later in the show when we interview Johnathon Banks, who is the trainer of Wladimir Klitschko for the final fights of his career, and that's a real interesting interview coming up. Hey, these guys rock, man. These expert analysts tell you stuff that you don't get anywhere else. If you like this show, post us on your social media. Help us grow. Tell other boxing fans about the Ringside Boxing Show. Okay, so Danny, the next real showcase fight on the horizon is Danny Garcia against Sean Porter. It's coming up September 8th. Garcia's 34-1, got 30 knockouts, hasn't fought since February of 2017. That's 20 months. His only loss was a split decision to Keith Thurman in March 2017. He sure could have won that one. Porter, 28-2. 1 draw, 17 knockouts. He also, man, he could be undefeated too. He lost to Thurman and he lost to Kell Brook. Both of those were razor-thin decisions. So Porter's a pressure fighter. Garcia's a counter-puncher. What an interesting matchup that is. How interesting is this fight for you, and who do you see winning it, Danny?
I think it's an awesome fight. I mean, I don't think we'll know until they get in there. One thing is, it took Danny Garcia a really long time to earn my respect as far as on the highest level in boxing. But every time he was put in as the underdog with somebody, he found a way to win, even when he was out. People thought he was outmatched. And Porter, I mean, he turned pro like at 165, I believe, and he had probably around 10 fights, worked his way down to 147. Porter, I have to say, in the division, Porter's the guy that I always root for. I don't know. He's a great, nice guy. We have the same birthday, so I don't know. That's a little weird thing. But I like when he says if his opponent is comfortable, it makes him uncomfortable, and he lives up to it every fight. I just think Danny Garcia always figures out a way to win, so I can't really pick against him either. I thought the Thurman fight, Thurman came out like guns blazing, looking like he was going to kick Garcia's ass for a few rounds, and then he took his foot off the gas pedal and tried to coast and make the fight safer, and that's what let Danny back in the fight. I think Porter's going to bring it to Danny, but Danny's a hard guy to count out. I feel like he fights up or down to the level of his opposition a lot, and Porter's going to make him fight on that level and take his game. He's not going to let him take any rests or make anything easy for him. So as far as how it goes, it's another tough fight to pick. I tend to favor Porter just because of his aggression and his tenacity, but I think Danny's sharper. I think I'm a little biased for Porter because I know Porter a little better, and I don't know. I'd like to hear the other guys' opinions. I could definitely see people saying Danny will outbox him and win somewhat convincingly, but I think it's a good fight. It's an intriguing matchup, and I'd like to see how it plays out.
Go for it, guys. What do you guys think? Travis, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I mean, Danny Garcia has been an anomaly to me. I'm really good at picking big fights. Like, I have a really, really good percentage of picking fights exactly how they're going to go down and everything, and I've been wrong a couple on Danny Garcia. He's just impossible to bet against because, like you were saying, Danny was saying, he wins. He finds a way to, and it's ugly usually. Like it's like a sloppy left hook that knocked out Amir Khan. Like it's just stuff that doesn't look like it's going to be that good, but he wins. And there's a lot to be said about a person that just wins, and that's all they know how to do is they find a way to win no matter what. Because I don't think Danny Garcia is the most sharpest fighter. I don't think he hits the hardest. I don't think he doesn't have exceptional talent. He just overall gets it done. So
he's got a hell of a chin. That's one thing I know.
Yeah. I mean he does. He's got a granite chin. I can give that to him for sure. But a guy like Porter, I'm telling you, as any fighters, you do not look forward to ever fighting a guy like Porter because even if you win, it is going to be a dogfight. It's going to be ugly. He is going to make you earn every single round because he's on your chest. It's sloppy. He doesn't care about looking good. Porter doesn't care about looking good. He cares about making you look as bad as you can, smothering you, just doing everything. I'm going to go with Porter, guys. I'm going to pick Porter, and I'm probably going to eat my words because Danny Garcia always makes me eat my words. But I think that Danny Garcia's a little later in his career, and I think that Porter is going to really, really make him uncomfortable.
And Travis, I agree. I agree totally. When I said Porter, I thought I heard some people chuckle, and I thought that everybody was going to pick Garcia. I agree exactly with what you just said. I feel like Danny's going to make me wrong again, maybe, but I favor Porter a little too.
I just think he's going to make it uncomfortable. What do you got, Riz?
Yeah. I don't think, you know what, I agree with everything you guys said, but I think this is not Danny Garcia from 5 years ago. I don't think he's hungry as he once was. I know he has a kid now. That changes guys. And I think Porter has always been the hungry guy, and I think even more so now he is. I think he wants, because he's been craving a Thurman rematch. He didn't get it. He wants a big fight, and where Garcia's still a big enough name, Garcia's like, all right, yeah, I'll take the fight. Porter's like, no, I want this fight. And I think, skill-wise, Garcia is definitely, he's always been a guy who he finds a way to win. He is the best, and I said this years ago, even in Matisse, that he's such a great overall fighter. And I think there's something to be really said about that. He's not the fastest, he's not the hardest. He doesn't, he has good conditioning. He doesn't throw the most amount of punches, but he finds a way. What he can do really well, which has always shocked me in some ways, he's able to find his opponent's weakness. and exploit it enough to get a win. And there's something to be said about that. And Porter's very we all know what his weaknesses are. He rushes in, he kind of like he's open for a lot of shots, but it's it's easier said than done to choose the right counter shot, to do all those kind of things. I think in some ways Porter could be actually very tailor-made for Danny Garcia. He could be walking in, and Garcia is a great counterpuncher. But I to be honest, it's one of those fights where Porter's going to do everything he can to win, and Garcia, it just depends how much he wants it. Because I noticed against Thurman, that didn't look like the same Danny Garcia. He didn't look like he really, really wanted it.
He didn't have an urgency, it seemed like.
No, it doesn't seem like there was any urgency, and I think that's the problem here. I think we're going to have the same problem. I think there's no he doesn't have the same oomph in his training and everything. It doesn't seem like he's 100% there. And boxing is not one of these things that that you can kind of do halfway. So I'm hoping he shows out the way he wants, but because I'd rather see him against Errol Spence than Sean Porter, because I think Danny Garcia versus Errol Spence would be a good test for Errol Spence. And but honestly, this matters are Garcia. We know what Porter's going to do. We know what he's going to bring, but let's see what Garcia's going to bring.
Okay, let me throw this next one out to anybody who wants to jump in there, okay? What do you guys make of John David Jackson coming after Kovalev this week? He called him a borderline racist, said he's a nasty person. These are all separate stories. And he said he got his ass kicked by Eleider Alvarez because he wasn't properly trained. Jackson has always seemed to me to be one of the quieter guys in the sport. Maybe I have the wrong impression. But, man, there is some real bitterness there, and I'm wondering why you think Jackson is all of a sudden, trying to push Kovalev's button.
Yeah. Dennis,
I think it goes back to the rematch. I mean, obviously the stuff that came out during the rematch, even if it was rumors and innuendo or what the truth was to it, I mean, that's going to always cause a big problem. And I think Travis was about to say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, when I fought Jorge Paez Jr. on the HBO pay-per-view card, it was the undercard of Hopkins versus Tarver. And John David Jackson had kind of been brought in to be like an assistant type of trainer for Hopkins. And I don't know why, but some people give me these feelings. And like when I met John David Jackson, I just got bad feelings about him. I don't know, and I just didn't think he was a good person. And later on, all this stuff's coming out about Kovalov. It could be whatever, I'm sure Kovalov probably is a little bit racist. I mean he's probably open about that even. But I know that John David Jackson actually trained one of my good friends in the boxing game, and my good buddy. They don't train him anymore, and he's like, he didn't like John David Jackson either. He said he's a phony, he's a fake, he's not genuine, and I've heard nothing from the inside. I've heard nothing but not good things about John David Jackson. And I'm not saying that he's right or wrong about this Kovalov stuff. I'm just saying that ever since I met John David Jackson, I didn't get good feelings about him, and they were reassured, as the years went by, about other people telling me stuff about him that I trust and value their opinion. But I don't think John David Jackson's a good guy, and that's kind of where it's at. They're both probably shitty people, Kovalov and him possibly. But I think it does feel like John David Jackson's almost like a scorned ex-girlfriend or something with his comments. It's like, if he was so racist, bro, why'd you work with him for 2 or 3 years? Like, he obviously wasn't that racist.
This is more about him than it does about Kovalov.
And the whole racism thing. I mean, in boxing, just from being in all the gyms over the years, you see, I don't see racism. If anything, and it's almost not even considered racism. My trainers or somebody telling me, Danny, you're doing this like a white boy. You're doing that like a white boy.
Yeah.
There's not that many white guys in the gym. So, you just grow used to it. I think the whole racism thing, and like Trevor said, I think it's just him trying to get some press and maybe pick up some more guys to train at this point. I don't know.
Yeah, go ahead, Riz.
Yeah, I don't think I think this says more about John David Jackson than it is about Kovalev. If he's racist, then why are you working with him 2 years? Are you just able to you're going to take money just because the guy's racist, but he's paying you enough? That says more about him, because I haven't really heard anything about Kovalev. I've never heard. Kathy Duva loves him, and promoters are really quick to throw their fighters under the bus. So to say that he doesn't thank Kathy or whatever, Kathy's never complained about that. So I don't think that's that says more. And as far as is Kovalev a great guy? I don't know, to be honest, and I'm not going to assume one way or the other. Yeah. But I do know the way a lot of Eastern European fighters come over here. They don't have the best upbringing. Their culture is very, very different, and some of them are just more blunt. That's it.
Exactly.
Right? So I'm
the
not
culture and the language barrier. People don't give them any brick. You know what I mean? Based on
Yeah.
their culture, where they come from,
I'll
how they were
say
raised.
this. I
And
went
there's a big
to
language barrier. We learn the English. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a great job learning English, and
I would say that I went to both of his fights against Pascal, and both of those fights against Pascal, I met him after each fight. He was always very good with the media.
Cool.
He was always very Kovalev. He was always very thankful to the media. He was always very polite. He shook people's hands like he was. He seemed to me like a genuinely good guy. And again, I don't know very little about him, but all I can know is we've heard a lot more about John David Jackson than we have about Kovalev. And all the stuff, like Travis said, I've never heard one good thing about John David Jackson, especially lately. And I said this before, Kovalev was a hard luck guy. Kovalev was winning the Ward fight, the first one. He was ahead on at least one of the scorecards in the second fight, and that was when his trainer was threatening to switch sides. I mean, I can't imagine. Like Travis can probably speak on this.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I can't speak the mental anguish that probably takes like the toll on a fighter. Pretty much, he was training himself. That means for a rematch, and he was still winning rounds. And a guy who's considered the best pound for pound fighter in the world, and and it took low blows and a ref stopping a fight early to pretty much get him out of there. So, in some ways, like that's why Kovalev after the Alvarez loss, he said he had no excuses. He just said, "No, got to be better man." Because I think for the first time in his career, he actually felt like he had things kind of going correctly. I've never heard one good thing about John David Jackson. And if Kovalev's a racist, it says a lot more about you if you're still working with him. Why were you working with him then? I've never heard of a trainer said, well, this guy's racist, but I'm still going to stick around. I've never heard that, and it speaks a lot more to him than it does about Kovalev. So
and you know what, all the guys went as far as the racism thing. Again, when you're amongst your friends and you're making jokes with people you're close with, and your trainer-fighter relationship, I mean, you should have that kind of relationship at least, where you crack jokes maybe necessarily that you wouldn't say publicly, especially if you're a public figure. But between friends, you don't mean it in a malicious manner. You're not being racist. You're fooling around with your buddies, and you don't expect them to come out and start saying things to the press like against you. You know what I mean? So I agree, with both you guys said. I don't know them both very well, but I met Kovalev after a couple of his fights, and for the first Ward fight, I was at the press conference, and I talked to John David Jackson and him, and I kind of got the same impression. I was a little disappointed with Kovalev. I always thought he reminded me of an old school, like, hard-nosed guy, no excuses, all business, and I did think he a little bit after the Ward fight, like, he was a little bit, some of the things he was saying, but I just think he was in shock, because he was just so used to winning at that point. And I thought the stoppage was bad in the one fight.
Everything was kind of going against him. And if you remember, in one of the previews, I can't remember which one, maybe it was for the Hopkins fight, John David Jackson said that him and Kovalev, he almost broke off an agreement with Kovalev, I think after, I can't remember which fight it was, and then John David Jackson said, oh no, he did everything I asked him to do, so I said, okay, I'll continue working with him. So he was kind of already half out the door at one point. Again, and I can't imagine the toll it takes on a guy like Kovalev. I mean, you got to remember, this guy left his whole family and everything, and immigrated here to America, set up camp. He did a lot, right? Like it takes. So to have someone even be somewhat against him, it could definitely take a toll.
The only thing then, to play devil's advocate again, there's such a little amount of money to go around for trainers and big fighters where you're going to get that kind of payday. So. I understand. I agree when we're saying John David Jackson, what kind of guy is he? If he's saying he's racist and he worked with him, but at the same time, how many people are there where they're like a meal ticket where you're going to really make real money training them? So that's another thing. But like Travis, like Travis said, I think it's just him trying to stay relevant at this point, saying stuff after the second fight here.
Okay, so new subject here, and let me throw this one at you first, Danny. Shane Mosley said this week that Mikey Garcia was basically a courageous fool for wanting to jump to 147 pounds to fight Errol Spence. Man, I'm really anxious to see that fight, and I admire Mikey for daring to be great, as everybody's saying. But does Mikey versus Spence make any real sense to you? Does this have a chance to be a great fight?
I'll tell you what. I'm curious to hear everybody else's take on this, because I'm a little dumbfounded, but I like it. I'm always the guy, the last to believe, kind of. I remember back in the day, and real quick, Travis had said he fought on Hopkins' Tarver card. It was interesting. It made me think of it because I remember I was at Malinaji Koto the same night. That's why I didn't make it down there. But anyway, I'm kind of the last guy to believe. I remember I picked, and I usually pick fights right, but when these guys are like these phenoms that everyone's talking about and I haven't really seen them test it yet, I tend to question them longer than everybody else. Like I picked Tony against Jones at the time, and Earl Spence, it just seems like everybody from the amateurs and big guys, small guys, everybody's on board with Earl Spence since before we even really knew who he was. So it's weird, and Mikey wants him. I mean, at the same time, I know a lot of top fighters who've been in camps with the really good fighters, guys you would think are bigger and better than Mikey Garcia, and I've asked them, who's the best guy you ever been in the ring with in camp or in sparring or whatever, and a lot of them tell me Mikey Garcia, and I was surprised to hear that from guys that are bigger and guys that you would think are better. I think it's awesome that he's doing it, but I don't know. I don't think the fight will happen, to be honest, because I think his brother and everybody else, I don't know. I don't know how deep in negotiations or whatever they are. But, the fight is never really on, until they both sign, and there's still a lot of things that could go wrong. I think it's awesome on Mikey's part because I think Floyd kind of ruined boxing in that all the kids in the gym now, they don't want to be like Marvin Hagler or Evander Holyfield and be tough and be the best and whatever. They want to make money and have easy fights and be real selective. And I train in some of these MMA gyms as a striking coach, and it just impresses me. I always stick up for boxing, but even young kids, they're sometimes like prima donnas as far as picking opponents and not taking fights, and there's not really that many fights for kids coming up on a club level. It's impossible almost for some of these kids to get fights. They just stay inactive unless they take total mismatches where they're getting thrown at the wolves and have to, just get lucky almost. So I don't know, I'm sorry I went off track a little bit, but I respect Mikey a lot. I don't know. I think Mikey will hang in there if they make the fight. I don't think the fight will happen, but I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say.
I think the fight actually might happen. I think Mikey just not talking. I think he sees something, and I think he understands that now fighting Errol Spence in a year from now is probably a horrible idea, but maybe now it's not a bad idea. And again, he understands the risk reward. I mean, if he loses, so what? He went up in weight and lost against a guy who people consider one of the best fighters in the world. But if he wins, this is a Mosley De La Hoya situation to me. Obviously Spence is a big guy who De La Hoya was already coming up in weight before, and then Mosley kind of joined him. So the scenario is a little different, but it has that element of because Mosley, before he beat De La Hoya, he wasn't a star, and then he became kind of a pay-per-view fighter and all that. And I think Mikey kind of sees that. And Mikey, when he took that time off, I think he came back understanding that, if he makes big fights, he'll get A, more money, and B, he can retire earlier because he's always had the natural talent, but I don't think his heart was ever fully committed to it. And Errol Spence, I'll say this, obviously he's been great as a professional. I never thought he was a good amateur at all. I always thought he was, I remember watching him in the Olympics, and I saw him get it rocked, with shots with headgear on, or maybe it just looked awkward. And so ever since I saw him more and more as a professional, I never thought he was going to amount to anything, to be honest. And this is one of those, this is like how Travis was saying about Golovkin. That's Errol Spence for me, where just I don't understand, this guy's overrated, yada, yada. And then I saw him in person. I saw him against on Adonis Stevenson Carpensi undercard in Toronto, and he fought that Chris Van Herden. I can't pronounce his last name. I don't remember off the top of my head. He was a guy who had a sparring match with McGregor and became kind of famous for that. And just the class of Errol Spence in that fight. I mean, again, I know it's not the most elite talent, but the body shots and just the time and everything, and it's just this doesn't look like the same fighter that I saw as an amateur. I think the team behind him has done wonders. I think Mayweather's been a good advisor for him. All those things I think have made a big difference. Another thing is Errol Spence. He's a very low key kind of guy, right? He's not he's not getting in trouble or anything like that. He's not like a Broner or Gervonta Davis. He just calm, cool, collected. Just goes and does his work. So I do want to see him against Mikey Garcia, I think, because, I mean, let's face it, Garcia and Porter, the winner of that, is not going to fight Errol Spence anytime soon. Thurman, who knows what's going on? I don't know. Thurman's just in love right now, right? He got married, and I don't know. I think that's it.
I saw that, and I saw after the Danny Garcia fight, I took my take on that fight was a little different. I thought he came out like guns blazing, and then I thought he was the one who took his foot off the gas pedal and looked to try to coast. And I didn't like it. Keith Thurman was known coming up to talk shit to everybody and call everybody out and act like a tough guy and act like he's the man. And I found that I was at the Danny Garcia fight at the press conference afterwards. I saw him with all Mayweather's people, and all he was talking about was money and business and being smart as a businessman. And I can't stand when somebody who, you know, I thought was like had unlimited potential, like Thurman, all of a sudden wants to be a businessman instead of a fighter. Like, I understand they have to do it a little, and maybe someone should tell Mikey Garcia, you know, maybe to think about that as well. But and just to backtrack, I wasn't saying I don't think Mikey will really take the fight, or I wasn't doubting his sincerity or integrity as far as to fight Spence. I just feel like the people, you know, controlling what really happens and the money, it doesn't. I don't know. I feel like people will make the fight not happen, not him. But I liked your analogy about Oscar, and when you said it, it made me think more like when Oscar went up to fight Hopkins. Like, it was almost like a no-lose situation because it was like he was trying to do something that was a little unrealistic anyway. But sorry to cut you off there, guys.
Yeah. No problem. I think you're absolutely right. I think Mikey's sincere about it, but I think the timing more than anything else makes sense for both guys. I think Mikey wants a big fight. I think Errol Spence wants a big name, and I don't think any of them are getting kind of what they want in their respective careers right now. I think both of them are playing a waiting game, and I think both of them are more willing to make something happen than not. And I think the teams around them, I think, are confident in their own fighter that they're willing to do it. I think it's weird, but it's, you know, first I heard it, and I'm like, wait, this doesn't make sense. Now I'm looking at it, and I'm like, I can't think of another option for either of these guys right now. So Spence has to wait. Mikey's not going to end up fighting Lomachenko. He's not going to end up fighting Terrence Crawford because Top Rank doesn't want to do business with Mikey, obviously, with their falling out. So what are the other options? I think this is the best option for both guys.
I think both fighters are throwback fighters, though. That's Mikey and Errol. I think they 100% want that fight. They're throwbacks. Like, they will go and fight anybody anywhere, and that's when Errol did that when he went and fought Kell Brook. I was surprised that he took that fight. So young too, and he went over there and handled his business. So I think that there's a good chance the fight would happen. And at the end of the day, does it really matter about Mikey Garcia wins or loses? That's a win-win for him. It's a smart fight for him because it's his biggest payday. If he loses, we're all going to be like, oh, well, he was 12 pounds light. You know, he's a small guy. Like, he's supposed to lose. But if he wins, the risk and the reward of this fight, it's definitely in Mikey Garcia's favor. So if he wanted to take this fight, it's a perfect fight for him to pick, just because, like I say, he has nothing to lose. He's going up. If he beats the guy, oh my gosh, it's probably one of the biggest wins in the history of the sport for a little while, the biggest upset even. And if he loses, no big deal. He goes back.
Yeah, the only place where I disagree, and again, it's not that I disagree, it's just the way the boxing fans and the media are that really pisses me off. It's like they're so obsessed with these guys having an undefeated record, like, you know what I mean? So, because Mikey right now is talking about being top pound for pound, like, you know, he's top 2 or 3 or whatever he said after that last fight. I mean, I agree with everything you said, but I just feel like if he takes a loss, and especially if it's a little bit one-sided, even to the least bit, I feel like a lot of these casual fans who don't really know who anyone is, or they barely do, will like, you know, abandon him, and he loses a lot of his you know, his drawing power, you know, and it's ridiculous because he shouldn't, but it's like, that's where, again, I was saying the MMA guys, like, they lose. I remember when Randy Couture was heavyweight champion, his record was like somewhere around 500. Nobody cared if he won or lost. He was still like, whatever they called him, Captain America or something. And with the boxers, it's ridiculous. You got these people protecting fighters and being so obsessed with their O, and if their O goes, and it's ridiculous. But unfortunately, it seems like the networks and the fans and the media judge them so harshly, even during fights. Like, a guy, you have a guy who has 40-0 or something, and he has a few bad rounds, and the HBO guys are like, oh, he's not looking right. He might have to, like, he should think about retiring. Like, and then if he wins a couple rounds later, you know, they change their tune, like, over a couple of rounds. It pisses me off hearing, you know, them throw guys under the bus, because it's the only sport where you're all alone. They don't know if you had the flu, you had a fight with your wife, you had a car accident, anything could happen, and they act like, you know, like none of these guys are usually, and Travis, I'm sure you know, I know you took a lot of fights on short notice and stuff like that. Like, people don't take all that stuff into consideration. You don't have a backup, you can't pass the ball, and they're held to such a ridiculous standard as far as like just picking up a loss against a guy who maybe you have no business even fighting. So I agree with you guys. I just think, maybe his brother and some of his people might not be real big on taking the fight. That's all.
Yep, I think you're right. Okay, Riz, you get the last one here because I think you're the only one of the four of us who watched Golden Boy's experiment with streaming Saturday night. Joseph Diaz Jr. and Jesus Rojas was a complete disaster. Golden Boy is getting slaughtered on social media today. You watched that fight. Tell people what happened.
After round 4, watching the Facebook stream, it crapped out, and it just kept looping. There was an interview with a prospect, and it just kept looping over and over. And, I see all the comments, everyone's complaining, so I know it just wasn't my computer. And after, I think, another 6 minutes, so like 2 rounds later, there was a post from Golden Boy's account that said, "Oh, just refresh your browser; it's working now." People are doing that; we're having the same problem. So this went on pretty much the rest of the fight. So after round 4, no one knows what happened. And the funny thing is, this was it turned out to be a pretty good fight. And they were not able to fix it. And people missed what turned out to be a pretty good fight. I saw the views drop from about like 50,000 to 14,000 at some point. And this is the difference. This is the difference in quality between a Facebook stream, an ESPN Plus, and like a DAZN. Right? There's Eddie Hearn put up $1 billion for that, and that's because it doesn't matter how good the fight is. No one's seeing it, and it doesn't matter. And I'm not going to go back and watch the last 8 rounds and I know what happened. And I think most people are not going to do that either. So Golden Boy really dropped the ball, and this is just a difference of quality, quality of fights, quality of what's your investment? Are you willing to pay for the best? Which I don't think Golden Boy did. Facebook stream. I think there's been a couple fights on Facebook streams before. I know UFC has experimented with it. I don't know if they have had as many issues, but this was really bad. I mean, this wasn't like, oh, this crapped out for 30 seconds. This was pretty much the rest of the fight. And and even the quality, it wasn't like a crisp HD. It wasn't. It definitely looked like a very low quality event, low quality stream, and everything that went with it just seemed very low quality. They wouldn't do this. I hope they wouldn't do this for a Canelo fight or something like that. So I think they really have to evaluate what they're going to do. I think Golden Boy just continuously falls behind on everything, and they're trying to get it. They're trying to stay relevant, but they kind of do it the half-ass way. And this was not the way to do it. And I think anyone who's kind of supporting the Facebook stream, if you're getting friends together for a fight and it's on HBO, you're not wondering, hey, is the stream going to crap out? Is the broadcast going to crap out? No one's. But now that's actually a legit concern. So I mean, it's the
Absolutely.
the problem with technology at the same time. But I know like DAZN has Champions League Soccer. They do a bunch of things. So this is not something new for them. They're just taking out boxing, so their quality has already been there. And I don't think Facebook is, and De La Hoya and Golden Boy should have done a little more research before they did that.
There's your boxing fix for the week, Ringside Nation, from Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, and Danny Saratelli, the fight lawyer. Great job, guys, man. That rocked. And Danny, thanks for sitting in with us this week.
Thanks for having me, guys. Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys letting me sit in with you guys, and it was a pleasure.
A lot of fun. We got a very quick break coming up, followed by Paul McLaughlin, who's going to catch us up on the UK boxing scene, and then John J. Risponti and I will be back to talk to Johnathon Banks, who's going to tell us about how Wladimir Klitschko reacted behind closed doors after Shannon Briggs knocked him off his paddleboard with a speedboat and stole food off his plate and a few other things. It's great stuff, and that's about 5 minutes away. That's about a 35-minute interview coming up, and it's really in-depth, so you don't want to miss it. We will be right back, so stay with us.
Oh, boy, is this great!
You're listening to the Ringside Boxing Show, the hottest, sweatiest show on West Coast Radio.
I'm Dennis Taylor, co-author of the Amazon bestseller Intimate Warfare, the true story of the Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward boxing trilogy. Writing this book was a labor of love for John J. Risponti and myself.
We enjoyed every minute of the process and considered it a privilege to tell the tale of one of the most electrifying boxing trilogies in the history of this sport. Intimate Warfare traces the collision course of Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward from their earliest days through their 3 epic fights, as well as the aftermath of this great rivalry, which culminated in one of the greatest friendships in boxing. Intimate Warfare has received a 4.5-star rating from readers and was endorsed by Hall of Famers Harold Letterman and Joe Cortez and 2-time Trainer of the Year Virgil Hunter. Our foreword was written by Ray Boom Boom Mancini, another one of the greatest blood and guts fighters of our time. Get your copy today at Amazon.com.
Hi there, it's Paul McLaughlin with your weekly roundup of everything going on in the UK boxing scene at the moment. First off, we start with Callum Johnson, who has branded Artur Beterbiev a beast, but insists his knockout power can topple the fearsome IBF light heavyweight king. The 32-year-old British and Commonwealth champion has seized the opportunity to challenge Beterbiev for the IBF belt on promoter Eddie Hearn's first US-based DAZN show in Chicago on October the 6th. Beterbiev is renowned as one of boxing's most dangerous punchers, winning all 12 fights by knockout. But Johnson intends to retain the all-action approach, which has brought him 12 stoppages in an unbeaten 17-fight record.
Yeah, I think, probably a sensible move. He's only a young kid. He's 26, I think. He's still learning the game. He looks the part, but you've got to remember he's not had the experience I've had in the amateurs and things like that. People don't probably realise I had 60 or 70 international boxing matches as an amateur, and I've boxed all these big bad Russians before, so I've got the experience, and I'm 32, and listen, I've been given the chance, and it's a chance that I'm going to try and take with both hands.
Next up, Lawrence Okolie is targeting a world title by 2020 and hopes an emphatic win over Matty Askin will keep him on a collision course with the elite cruiserweights. The unbeaten 25-year-old will test himself against British champion Askin on the undercard of Anthony Joshua's world title fight with Alexander Povetkin at Wembley Stadium on September the 22nd. With 7 knockouts in 9 wins, Okolie has already blasted his way to the Commonwealth belt and intends to continue the swift progress that he has shown since he was an amateur boxer. And finally, Kubrat Pulev has announced that his IBF final eliminator against Hughie Fury will be staged in Sofia on October the 27th. The Bulgarian is the highest ranked contender in the IBF rankings and will fight Fury for the right to become mandatory challenger for Anthony Joshua's IBF heavyweight title. Pulev had firstly been ordered to face Dillian White and then Gerald Miller, but both turned down IBF final eliminators, and the Crow proclaimed that Fury has now accepted the fight. We caught up with Hughie to see how confident he is about going into Pulev's backyard.
Yeah, 100%. Listen, I love the challenge, I love the competition, and I'm good. To be honest with you, I'm probably more confident going into his backyard than me coming to mine. So, like I say to you, it doesn't matter if he's here or there. Scoring's always not going to be the greatest, as you can see when I was seeing past fights. It doesn't matter where you're at.
Right, that's your lot from me, guys. I'll be back next week with some more cracking British boxing news. In the meantime, gloves up and protect yourselves at all times. Back to the studio.
Thank you, Paul McLaughlin. It is indeed cracking, as you say. Hard for me to remember when there's been this much excitement on your side of the Atlantic. Great stuff, man. Our featured guest is 1 minute away. Don't touch that dial.
Hi, I'm Dennis Taylor, host of the Ringside Boxing Show, where since 2008 we have been continuously sponsored by Garcia Boxing, the first family of the sweet science on California's beautiful Central Coast. Trainers Max and Sam Garcia and ring strategist Dean Familton are regarded among the most knowledgeable in the game. And Kathy Garcia, who manages all Garcia boxing fighters, is renowned for her integrity and career guidance, having taken 2 boxers to #1 world rankings. Together they comprise one of the most respected teams in the sport. Learn more by calling 831-261-3214 or send them an email at garciaboxing25@aol.com.
I don't want you living with roaches.
Mitchell has rubbery legs
I don't think Banks finish him right here. Yeah, I don't think
you heard Cotton say, you got to show me something. Somewhere Emmanuel Stewart is cheering as Banks tries to get it done. Bird knocked down with the round. And that's it. The fight is over. Seth Mitchell has been knocked out by Johnathon Banks. An amazing upset. Stewart magic.
The fighter who started at 15 beat the fighter.
Welcome back to the Ringside Boxing Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. That clip you just heard was from 2012 when Johnathon Banks won the vacant WBC International Heavyweight title in Atlantic City with a second-round knockout of Seth Mitchell, who was undefeated at the time. Johnathon Banks previously won the IBO Cruiserweight title, and he went on to become a trainer for World Heavyweight Champion Wladimir Klitschko back in 2015 after Emmanuel Stewart passed away. Johnathon also trained Dillian White, and he's currently working with Cecilia Braekhus, an undefeated Norwegian fighter who currently holds 5 world title belts. I think she's the only unified world champion on the planet right now, and she's the welterweight division. There you go. And she's currently, I looked this up, she's currently ranked by BoxRec.com as the #1 female fighter of all time. Johnathon Banks was a Kronk Gym fighter, and he's born and raised in Michigan, where I think he still lives in Detroit. Johnathon, thanks for making some time to us today on the Ringside Boxing Show. Good to have you back. How's life, champ?
Hey, man, it's my pleasure. Life is good. I can't complain, and life is good when I'm on the Ringside Show.
There you go, man. So, hey, we got a few topics we want to hit with you today, but let's start with Cecilia, who's 34-0, 9 knockouts, holds 5 world title belts, and just scored a unanimous decision victory last month over, and I'm going to try and get this name right, Inna Sagadakovskaya in Moscow.
You did a lot better than me.
A lot better than me, too.
and she's getting ready to defend her title again for the 3rd time this year on September 15th at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. Any news or rumors yet about a potential opponent for that fight?
Not yet. They're going through. She got mandatories. When you got all the titles, you gotta make the sanction bodies happy. So you got to do mandatories, and you got a lot of females now who rightfully deserve their #1 spot and deserve a chance for the title. So they haven't came up with a decision of which one yet or who's the mandatory. So that's what they're working on now.
I got to ask you: is there still any buzz about Cyborg fighting her?
I hear the buzz about it, but I don't know in terms of, because when you're dealing with someone from the UFC, then they control everything you do basically. So she got to deal with that, and then we see where it goes.
Well, the other thing we're hearing all the time, people are pushing hard to see her fight another Michigan fighter, that 2-time Olympic gold medalist Claressa Shields. But Claressa's a middleweight, 13 pounds north, and she's had just 6 pro fights at this point. Female fighters often have to make big jumps or drops in weight to find top-drawer opponents. But that's a big weight gap to close, it seems like. Is any of that speculation realistic at this point, that she might face Claressa sometime soon?
Well, it's #1. It's a huge gap. It's a huge gap. I know a lot of males have done it, but typically males, our body mass, we can gain weight and we can gain muscle along with that. But females don't typically do that. So I think, in my opinion, I think it's too big of a gap to jump, unless the risk is worth the reward.
Yeah. So, Johnathon, what's it like working with one of the best female fighters in the world?
Well, it's a pleasure to do it. She, oftentimes I get asked, what's the difference working with Cecilia and Wladimir Klitschko?
Yeah.
Outside of their gender is not a difference. And size, obvious size difference. It's not a difference because you got both fighters. Like when it comes to fighting, when you have the will to win, and you really want to be champion, you're willing to do whatever it takes in the gym, work your butt off in the gym to stay champion, you won't find a big difference in each champion. That's one thing that championship pedigree has in common. You know, the desire and the will to win and to work hard to put everything on the line night after night.
Yeah, she impresses me as a really intelligent and highly educated person. Is that accurate, and does that intelligence translate into ring savvy for her?
Well, I believe it's very accurate, and again, going back to previous dominant champions, they all was very intelligent.
Yeah,
you know, you don't too much get fighters that's dominant and that's undefeated and that's world champions year after year, time after time, and you don't find them to be quite intelligent outside the ring.
Yeah, Cecilia is a huge star in Norway, and she sells out arenas, which is really cool. I read that they actually lifted a 33-year ban on the sport in Norway where Cecilia when Cecilia came along. What's it like going there with her, Johnathon?
Well, number one, she was a part of that because that's the reason her pro career and amateur career and pro career pretty much got popular in Germany because Norwegian boxing was banned. Pro boxing, not amateur boxing, but pro boxing was banned for like you said, 34 years. So her and her team did everything they could to get that ban lifted. And once they got the ban lifted, she was able to fight there, which she was very, very excited to do. But being there in Norway with her it's like being with any type of celebrity. You know, you gotta master people always wanting a picture, autograph, and stuff like that.
Yeah, her last fight was in Moscow. What kind of experience was that for you? You know, being the Detroit guy where you started from to be in Russia. I mean, that's mind-boggling to me. I've never been there. How was that for you?
Well, it wasn't my first time though. It wasn't my first time in Russia. I fought out there as an amateur. I was there. The first time I went there as a trainer was when Wladimir Klitschko fought Povetkin. So coming back there, dealing with Cecilia, it was easy. It was no problem for me.
What are Russian fans like?
Like any other typical fans, man.
Really?
These people was amazing from start to finish. They was amazing. They already knew who I was because, like I say, I've been there with Wladimir Klitschko. So, but it was good. It's not what you typically would think. You know, you get the American public, like when you say I'm going to Moscow or going to Russia, like, ooh, be careful. It's not what you typically think, man. It was really nice.
Huh. Okay. Well, as we mentioned, you're a Kronk Gym guy, and there's an aura about that place, and it's great history. You know, I don't know, for fans who are just peripheral fans, guys like Thomas Hearns and Milton and Steve McCrory and Mark Breland and Dwayne Thomas and Hilmer Kente and Mickey Goodwin. What do you remember about walking in there the very first time as a young man? Did that take some nerve? Did everybody turn around and size you up like you were fresh meat at a penitentiary that first day you walked in?
That's what was there. Everybody walked in for the first time. The first thing you hear is fresh meat. Now, keep in mind, I'm just a kid, and this was, I want to say, 96, 97, so I'm like 14, 15 years old or something like that. But it's an environment where either you go crumble. If you crumble, you ain't coming back to that gym. But if you thrive, then everything you learn there, that's why so many champions came out of there. Everything you go through, everything you learn there, if you do the same thing on fight night, you're going to win.
What about the first time you met Emanuel Stewart? Is that a memorable story for you?
Oh, my goodness, man. When I first met Emanuel, I was 14 years old. 1996, I just won the Golden Gloves. And I wasn't with him at that time, obviously. And he came up, shook my hand, said congratulations. That was my first time meeting him, and I was just in awe because, like, come on, like I remember seeing all those tapes, and when Tommy fought Leonard the first time, the second time, you know, I just remember seeing him on TV a lot, you know. So when I finally got a chance to meet him, it was like, I'm like, wow.
Yeah, he was only he was only about 5'7" maybe, right? And he must have seemed 10 feet tall.
Man, listen, he was a giant from the first time I met him until the day he left here. He was, and he was a giant to me, and always will be, because his character and the way he treated people spoke volumes about him as a person. And to me, a lot of people go debating who's the best friend, who's this, who's that. Emmanuel will always be number one for me, because no matter how much fame he got, and I thought he was an awesome commentator as well, he never got to the point where he belittled anyone. You'll meet the smallest person or the highest, richest person. He treated him the exact same.
What do you think separated him as a boxing coach? What elevated him to the Hall of Famer that he was?
I think what elevated him was his ability to make you believe something that you didn't necessarily already believe. I think the way he treated you, because you got certain trainers, they only can deal with certain fighters, and they really, if you look at the training style and the fighter style, it's really the trainer is just really motivating the fighter to keep doing what he already doing. But Emmanuel was the type of guy, he could teach you, he could motivate you, and he can make you believe you're doing something that that you technically didn't even believe you could do. You know, I think in this aspect, he was awesome. And all the conversations, a lot of his training techniques come from having conversations with the fighters, because when you have certain conversations and you go over it over and over again, or you get into a fight and you start to remember those conversations, you start to remember what he said, and this is happening, it allows your reaction time to be faster, because it's already in your mind. As soon as you see it, boom, you can react to it.
What was it like for you guys in 2006 when some creepy thieves stole all the copper water pipes and Kronk had to close? That must have been a really sad day, Jonathan.
Well, the Kronk Gym was already closed at that time.
All right.
This particular place we was at, it was a recreation center, so it was a city-owned building. And all the money that certain fighters and Emmanuel himself gave to the city, the city dissolved. They just wanted it closed for whatever reason. There was no reason that we know about. They just wanted to close. So when you have things to sit in a community and no one's paying attention no more, things like that happen. It was a sad situation that it happened, and then they took 2 years later, someone threw something on top of the roof that caught fire. So it was a sad situation that particular building and helped groom, along with the man, still helped groom so many champions. It was sad that you have a landmark like that in a city and they just let it go to waste. I think, to me, that's more sad than almost anything, man. Other recreation centers closed, and not one had the history that the Kronk had. Kronk had the history. We've kept so many children off the street. So many kids I talked to, they tell me that, man, we want to come here. Like, my boys just got arrested. I would have been with them if it wasn't for me being in the gym. And yet that wasn't enough for them to the city just wanted to close.
Wow. So you're in a new facility on West Warren Avenue now, right? What's that place like?
Oh, the new facility, actually, that was the facility that we was in when Lady May Stewart passed. Now we're in a facility on Chicago on Metatol, on the west side of the city. So it's in the basement. So, I mean, it's nice, but it's not the same as the original.
Talking to Johnathon Banks. He's the former IBO Cruiserweight Champion of the world and was the trainer of Wladimir Klitschko. Let's talk about your time with Vlad for a while, which happened after Emanuel Stewart passed away in October of 2012. You were actually on a show a couple of years ago and told us the story, but we wanted to ask you to tell our audience again how that all came about. You were still an active fighter at the time, right?
Yeah, 2012. I remember I'm on my way to the gym, and I pull up at the gym. Before I go in, my phone starts ringing. I look at it, I'm like, Vlad, what Vlad still calling me? I answer the phone, like, what's up? And we talked for like maybe a minute and a half. He said, look, JB, the reason for the call is I need a coach. I said, okay. So I'm starting thinking, I got my phone, hurry up, see if I can find him a coach. He said, you hear what I said? I said, yeah. He said, I want you to be my coach. And I said, okay. He said, you hear me? I said, I hear you. He said, all you said was okay. I said, I know. I said, you said you want me to be the coach, right? He said, yeah. I said, okay. He said, hold on. JB, you never coached nobody in your life. What are you talking about? He said, you think you could do this? I said, listen, you said you wanted me to do it, so yeah, okay, I'll do it. And he said, okay. So I hung up with him, and the Tom Lawford called me, the operator at K2 Promotions. He told me about this upcoming match with Seth Mitchell in November. Now, Wladimir Klitschko fight was November 10th. My fight with Seth Mitchell was November 17th.
Oh man!
So we got a week apart. So later on I called Vlad. I said I made a deal with him because I got a fight coming up now. So he agreed for I could have my camp with his camp. So that was the deal. He take care of everything. So my camp with his camp, everything fine. And when I got there, he said to me again, like, hold on, JB, I just thought about this. You got a fight a week after me. Are you sure you could do this? I said, Brad, listen, if you was getting ready for a golf tournament, I said, it would be almost impossible for me to do this. Was you getting ready for a fight? I'm getting ready for a fight. I said, to me, it's the same. It's under the same umbrella. I said, okay. And that was that. We started camp, and the rest is history.
Wow. So when you're training a guy, when you get invited to train a guy like Wladimir Klitschko, doesn't it run through your mind? You know, what can I show him that he doesn't already know, or did you immediately think, yeah, I got things to offer him? Wasn't it daunting?
No, listen, man. I didn't think I had nothing to offer this dude. But the thing about it was, understanding where this is coming from. Me and Wladimir met 2012. I was 1-0. I was getting ready for my second fight when we met. So, I 2004. I'm sorry. We met in 2004. So we gained such a close bond in that time because I met him when he was restarting the final stages of his career, and I was just starting my pro career. You know, so he was getting his stuff up off the canvas when we met. So I met him at the best time because there was nobody around. We in camp. He got 1 or 2 sparring partners, just really me and him, breakfast, lunch, dinner. It was always us. We was always together. So that was one of the best times. One of the worst times for him, but yet one of the best times for me when I met him because we was able to be really, really close. Fight after fight, we was able to be really close. But once he got, obviously, to the championship, then he started having a little bit bigger camp, more sparring partners, more staff around him, stuff like that. But our relationship has always remained the same, and we gotten closer and closer, you know, through the times that we were sparring together and everything. So I was like one of his top sparring partners. He always wanted me in camp. And that translated to he knew I knew him. You know, no one else, anybody else could have came and trained him, but they didn't know him. Like, he felt I knew him better than just about anybody because we shared the ring together so many times and for so many years. So that was another comfort zone that he had with me. And the fact that I came up around Emanuel and I was always in the conversations with him and Emanuel was talking, that also helped out a lot.
How would you describe Klitschko as a person? I mean, what's his personality like?
Well, he's outside of training camp, or outside of the ring, should I say. He's one of the most down-to-earth people you want to meet. Him and his brother Vitaly, actually. They're two genuinely good guys. And matter of fact, me and Stitch Duran, the great Stitch Duran, the best cut man in the business, we was talking about the both of the brothers and how for just first class and genuine nice guys they are.
Really? Yeah, he's kind of a brilliant guy, right? I mean, he's a chess master. We read.
Yeah, he is. Both brothers are extremely intelligent brothers. Both of them are extremely intelligent. You can't ask for more than that. I mean, you got the way they behave themselves. It's like model citizens, They're intelligent, the way they behave themselves. They're very respectful to others. Very respectful, and they be to points that they don't have to be, but they're very respectful to anyone they come across.
Yeah, they're both PhDs too. That's more than the
exactly.
three of us could say.
Exactly.
This is the Ringside Boxing Show from Monterey, California. I'm Dennis Taylor with John J. Responte. We're talking to Johnathon Banks. He is the former IBO Cruiserweight Champion of the world, and also was a trainer of Wladimir Klitschko, and now he's training Cecilia Braekhus. Okay, got to ask you, take us behind the scenes when Shannon Briggs was pulling off all those annoying antics, knocking Vlad off his paddleboard and all.
My goodness.
Was Vlad hitting the heavy bag a little harder at those times just to work out some aggression?
He was a little upset, He was very upset because when he got knocked off the paddleboard, a boat was passing by, and his leg almost got caught in the propeller of the boat.
Oh.
So it could have been a very dangerous situation. I understand, Shannon. He was doing it for to get a fight, for propaganda, but it could have been a really dangerous situation. That's the one time. He didn't like that at all, because it could have been a really dangerous situation.
Yeah, and I think if I remember, Shannon sat down at lunch with him uninvited and maybe stole something off his plate.
He started eating his food. So Vladimir looked at him, so you about to come and start eating my food? So he poured water on his head. And Shannon that was the all end all. Oh my goodness. You just committed a crime. You can't pour water on my head after I came in and disturbed your meal.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy.
What was Vlad? How did Vlad take the loss to Tyson Fury? Was that tough on him?
Oh my goodness, man! It was. He just looked at me and said, "I don't know what happened." And he took it. It was really tough, like extremely tough for him.
What do you think's going to happen between Fury, Wilder, and Joshua? How do you rank those guys right now?
Oh, man, it's really difficult. To rank them. Fury's inactivity, so you got to put Joshua at 1. The active fighters is 1 and 2. Fury's been inactive. I know he's just come back with a cruiserweight and stuff like that, but I think you got to put Fury at number 3. Simply because his inactivity. So you got to come back and see what he's going to do with these big guys, these big young guys as well. So both guys can punch, and I don't think either guy is trying to be afraid to fight him. But at the same time, I don't think Fury should be next in line for a title. I mean, he got to work his way back up in the rankings. He's been sitting for quite some time.
Yeah, he's got the kind of style.
It's very interesting, though. Very interesting.
Yeah, it is. Fury's got the kind of style, right, Johnathon? That would, if he's in shape and sharp again, that would give Joshua and Wilder some problems.
I think any of the heavyweights in the top 8 if they're in shape, I think they would give any other heavyweight they fight problem. These top 8 to 10 heavyweights now in shape and coming forward, I think they would give any of the other ones a problem. It's difficult to say one won't give the other a problem. I'm not saying that someone will just walk up and beat them, but, given the fact that they're, like you said, if they're in shape, I think they'll give anybody. It's a problem for anybody you fight, not just one particular guy more than the other. I think he's a problem for anybody you fight.
Yeah. So how much do you think you grew as a trainer from the experience of training Klitschko?
I'll tell you this. It's crazy. I didn't realize I could do what was going on at the time. But you talking about evolving. Now, I feel like I evolved as a person, as a man, and even as a trainer. I feel like I evolved simply because I had to reach back and go over mentally everything I got from Emmanuel. Everything I learned, everything he said, it started coming to me. And you can't help but to grow off of that knowledge. So it allowed me to, I always had a calm demeanor, but allowed me to be a little bit even more calm than I already was, and allowed me to be able to, I guess I want to say, put words together that I necessarily wasn't thinking about. That type of thing.
Yeah.
So because I remember asking him, how's he do this, do that, and stuff he was doing. He said, listen, man, you got to read a lot. Read a lot, so when people ask me certain questions, it keeps your mind sharp. So when I started training him, the first thing I do is I started reading. I started reading a little bit more than I normally would. I started reading the different newspapers and stuff like that to keep my mind sharper than what it was before. And that's one of the things I learned from Emmanuel that allowed me to be able to do things on the spot, do things right away, because your mind never stops. And that's one of the things that he taught, that you got to allow your mind to keep going, that's why you read, to sharpen your skills, to sharpen your mind. And that's one of the things I learned from him, and it helped tremendously, especially as I one of the youngest trainers, period, ever to train the dominant heavyweight champion. I'm like, I have to. My whole thing was, I stopped saying, I wonder if I can do this, to a point where I was doing it. Now I have to get the respect of all these older people around me. Because older trainers, they looked at me like I was nothing. When we fought Povetkin, Jason McKinney came and shook my hand. He said, I remember you was a little boy when I saw you. And that's all they saw. That's all it was. That's all they saw. They saw the little boy that they saw before, years ago. So, but one thing that I'm happy I earned the respect of Wladimir Klitschko. I earned his respect. And that right there was enough, because if you earn the respect of a guy you're training, that's all you can ask for.
Yep.
Yeah. So do you hear yourself? Do you say things and you think to yourself, "Gosh, did Emmanuel Stewart say that at one time?" I mean, as a boxing coach, or do you think now you've evolved into everything you've learned from Emmanuel, and then of course there's Johnathon?
Well, Johnathon stays home. I don't put Johnathon in nothing I do. You see the face. I got the shell of me, but I keep everybody. People, Cecilia have never met Emmanuel before, but she hear about him every time we talk. Every time we in the gym, that's who she hear about, because that's who I keep in the faces of people that I'm around, because that's who I learned from. I went up under several different trainers to take a piece from that. I was under him more than anybody. And so that's who I put out there all the time. That's the name. I guess that this is the stuff I learned. I learned it from him.
Hey, last one for you. Who else are you working with right now? Are you still working with Adrian Granat?
I am, but I haven't talked to Adrian. I don't know when he's fighting again, but I am. So I got people always calling to see if I can work with their fighters, different fighters, but I haven't took on anybody else as of yet. But you know, we'll see. You know, I'm not trying to stack my plate because I'm not in competition to catch up with nobody to get a whole slew of fighters around. If it happened, I'm not gonna run from it. You know, but it's just, you know, I haven't done it yet.
No. Let me toss one more your way. What do you expect from Povetkin against Joshua?
You know what? I think, in my opinion, Povetkin hasn't been the same since he caught that left hook from Vladimir and had his first knockdown. He hasn't been the same fighter since then. Even when he got back up, he fought a tremendous fight. He kept going. He made it 12 rounds, but he haven't been the same fighter. So it's difficult. It just depends on how he approached Joshua. But I give Joshua the edge on winning the fight. You know, if Povetkin fights the small man fight, I don't think he could fight that fight better than Joshua. He got more experience in doing it than Joshua because he's been fighting longer. But I think Joshua's faster and his reflexes are quicker. So that's gonna be the tell-off for this fight. I picked Joshua to win, but again, to me, whoever walks in this fight with a better defense, because the offense pedigree is not going to change. The offense it is what it is. So whoever walks in with the better defensive-minded pedigree, I think will be the success in the fight.
Full stop.
Johnathon Banks won a world championship as a cruiserweight fighter, and now he's a world-class trainer. Johnathon, man, always a pleasure to talk to you. Good luck to you and your fighters, and thanks once again for making some time for us today on the Ringside Boxing Show.
Thank you, guys. The pleasure's all mine, and I said it before, I said it again. Anytime, I'm going to make myself available for you guys.
Thank you, Johnathon. Appreciate
all right,
it.
Johnathon Banks on the Ringside Boxing Show. Hey, do you like this show? Do us a solid and tell other boxing fans about us. Post Ringside Boxing Show on your social media sites. Help us grow. And by the way, if you have not yet discovered our website, you are missing out on probably the best boxing website for daily boxing news in the world. RingsideBoxingShow.com is awesome. We post the biggest headlines, best stories 365 days a year. If you're a serious boxing fan, this place should be your first stop every day, and it might be the only website you need for your boxing fix. Check it out right now and be amazed. RingsideBoxingShow.com. We want to thank our expert analysts, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, John J. Responti, and our British correspondent, Paul McLaughlin. And, of course, another huge thanks to today's featured guest, former IBO cruiserweight champion and boxing trainer Johnathon Banks. And finally, a big thanks to you, Ringside Nation, for being a part of our worldwide audience again today. Keep your chin tucked. We'll talk to you again next week on the Ringside Boxing Show.
Well, it's a great day for me to whoop somebody's ass. It's a bad day, so you better get off of my back. You might get cold cocked if you cross my path. It's a great day for me to whoop somebody.